In October 23, my dream trip happened and we spent a week road tripping around the famous Iceland Ring Road. And in this video, I'm going to be diving into everything you need to know about doing the Iceland road trip, following the Ring Road, the do's, the don'ts, what went well for us and what didn't, everything you need to know before you set off for Iceland. And not only am I giving you guys all the information in this video, down below there is a link to a free resource where you can get all this information in text format, as well as packing lists, my itinerary and discount codes for some of the best tours that we did during our time in Iceland. So I would highly recommend getting down below and downloading that guide. So to give you some context around my trip, we went in October. The two windows we had opportunity to go were October or November, and we decided to go for October. The reason was it's about the start of the Icelandic winter. So everything's cold and you get all the benefits of the cold in Iceland, such as more snow and darker nights. But October isn't too far into winter where you're then losing daylight. During winter, daylight hours can drop down to 4 or 5 hours a day. October gave us 7 to 8 hours every day of daylight, which meant the nights were dark enough that it gave us the opportunity to see the northern lights. Unfortunately, we didn't, but a lot more opportunity than in summer, but not quite as much as in November. Now, stating the absolute obvious, Iceland is cold. It's in the name, it's Iceland. And even in summer, it doesn't get particularly warm. So what you pack is essential. Now, it's not just about having really warm clothes. Layers are absolutely necessary for Iceland. And that's because the wind factor is something you just don't take into account. The wind is so cold and it penetrates through your clothing. So to that end, thermal layers are an absolute must. A thick winter coat, hoodies, long sleeves and t-shirts. To give you an idea, to stay warm pretty much every day I was wearing 2 pairs of socks, my boots on, thermal bottoms and then my cargos or trackies, a thermal undertop, t-shirt, a fleece, a hoodie and then my coat. And there were still points where I was cold. Down the south of the island, it wasn't too bad. It was pretty cold, but it wasn't awful. When you're going up the north of the island and you go up into the mountain range, at one point the car was reading -16 outside. So be prepared and take layers. Also, if you haven't already checked out the 3-part Iceland vlog series that we linked at the end of this video and down below, they are some of my favourite videos I've ever made because this trip was so good. So I recommend going and checking those out. To give you an idea of what to pack, here's the full packing list that is in the downloadable resource. Another reason why I recommend you download it is you can keep track of what you've packed. This is what I recommend for a week's trip. 3 t-shirts or long sleeves, 2 bottoms, I had cargos but jeans will be fine, 1 pair of jogger bottoms, 2 hoodies or jumpers, 2 sets of base layers, both top and bottom, 1 pair of shoes, 1 pair of walking shoes or boots, 8 pieces of underwear and socks, a thick warm raincoat, rain/windproof bottoms, the sort of niche ones like that I've also linked in the guide, like ones I recommend. Pair of gloves and beanie, scarf, believe it or not swimwear, there's plenty of places to get in hot tubs around Iceland and a lot of accommodations have them. And then moving away from clothes, a power adapter, portable charger, phone charger, your camera kit, your camera chargers, sunglasses I'd recommend, a passport, driving license, travel insurance, microfiber towel, car adapter, toiletries, first aid kit, packing cubes for your backpack and a medical kit. I dive into all of that in the guide as well. Now let's dive into how much Iceland's going to cost you. As you all know, I'm a budget traveller and I'll happily stay in budget locations, but we didn't really do that for Iceland because it's not really possible. There's a few hostels around the island, but there's not many. And if you're travelling in a group, it's actually probably better and you're going to enjoy it more to get Airbnbs and split that between you, which is what we did for every night except the first night. The first night we stayed in a hostel, which was one of the nicest hostels I've stayed in, and then for the rest of the time we stayed in Airbnbs that we split between the 3 of us. So I budgeted £50 a night per person for accommodation, and this worked out pretty much bang on. I then budgeted another £50 per day for food per person. We budgeted to make our own breakfast, make our own lunch, and eat out for dinner, which is pretty much what we did. Most mornings our breakfast consisted of pastries and coffee from a petrol station, but a couple mornings we did cook when we had some eggs and stuff like that. I'd say about 50% of our lunches were things we made, like we bought food to make sandwiches with, but then a few lunches we did just stop, again, petrol stations or supermarkets and just get something cheap for lunch. And about half of our dinners we made ourselves by buying pasta and ingredients and cooking it in the Airbnbs, and then half of our dinners we ate out. So we stuck to that £50 per day per person pretty well. Our car rental for 8 days was £103 per person, so £309 total, and that included our car insurance. And I gave us a budget of £250 for the week for fuel and then divided that by 3. And again, we were pretty much on budget with that. And one of the biggest costs, but one of the ones you absolutely don't want to skimp out on, was the activities we did. We spent £370 per person on activities. Now, those activities were going inside the Ice Glacier Cave tour, which was one of the coolest things I've ever done. That was an absolute must-do. We also did the whale watching. We snorkeled between tectonic plates, which is, just saying that sentence out loud is sick. And we went to the Sky Lagoon in Reykjavik at the end of our trip. So we did some absolutely incredible activities, and you can actually save on those activities when you book them using the discount codes in the guide linked below. So once you factored in flights, I set a total budget of £1,500 per person for a week's road trip around Iceland. I don't think that's a bad budget at all, and we stuck to that pretty perfectly. If you don't want to dive in and go nitty gritty like I did with your budget plan, I would say £1,500 is a very reasonable amount of money to set aside to do a week's trip around Iceland, especially when you're doing it with a group of people that you can split costs with. But don't forget that that price isn't factoring in buying things like a winter coat, thermals, etc. Here's my biggest advice for planning your itinerary, because this is where stuff went wrong for us. Google Maps will say it takes 2 hours to drive to this place, and yeah, maybe it does take 2 hours to drive there, but realistically, if you're going to Iceland in winter, road conditions aren't the best, and also Iceland is absolutely gorgeous. You are going to stop multiple times. As a rule of thumb, I sort of figured out that whatever Google Maps says it will take, add 50% of that onto the journey. And it might sound excessive, but you will stop at the side of the road, you'll get out, you'll take photos multiple times, and that also gives you enough of a buffer for any road condition changes, such as us. Trying to do a 3-hour drive took us 4.5 hours because we got stuck in a basic blizzard on the way to our Ice Glacier tour. So yeah, if you're planning your route and you're planning your days out, I would just keep that in mind. Every journey is going to take you longer than you initially think it's going to. We did an 8-day trip, and that was from day 1 landing at like 9 AM, picking up the rental car and getting straight on the road. To the final day, we woke up in Reykjavik and then drove to the airport, dropped the car off and went home. That's 8 days. It was a Wednesday to a Wednesday. If you can afford the extra day, then I would 100% use it. And I would use it as a day off. And that might sound a bit silly or counterproductive. If you're like me, you want to make the most out of every single day, and if you've got an extra day, you want to try and cram in activities into it. But this, just trust me, hear me out. Right in the middle of the week, we ended up in a Cury. It was about exactly halfway around the island from Reykjavik. We stayed in an absolutely gorgeous Airbnb, which again is linked in that guide. It was absolutely gorgeous. It was on the coast. It had a hot tub. It was lovely. And we all agreed we wished we had an extra day just to spend the day in a Cury, have a day to sort of relax because we've been so go for the days before, and just enjoy the Airbnb, have another night in the hot tub, go into town and spend the day like mooching around and not really do much. We all agreed it'd been a really nice way to break up the week. Now that being said, if you can't afford the extra day, you don't need this at all. We didn't have that extra day, and so we spent the night in a Cury and then moved on the next day. We just, in retrospect, if we had the time and had we known, we would have done that. So don't stress if you don't feel like you've got enough time. But if you can afford that extra day, I would definitely say it's worth it to just enjoy it. I'm sure you've seen all over social media the Blue Lagoon and the Sky Lagoon, the geothermal baths in Reykjavik. And you're probably so excited to go get your Instagram photos walking in and out of those baths. I would highly recommend you wait until the end of the road trip before you go to them. We spent 6 hours on our last day in the Sky Lagoon, and it was bliss. It was the best way to end a week on the road. It was so relaxing. It was just, I'm so glad we did it at the end of the trip and not at the start. So I would highly urge you to do the same. When you're driving, especially if you're driving in winter, this probably doesn't matter so much in summer when road conditions are a bit better. But when you're driving in winter, stick to the route 1 that just goes around the island. Stick to that road because it's the only, I think it's the only road that is maintained all year long. The lesser used roads don't get snowplowed, don't get gritted or salted like regularly. They do, I'm sure they do get them, but not regularly. But the Route 1 is always maintained open because it's the main access around the island. So stick to that road. And also, if you are a content creator in any way, photographer, videographer, and you like to spend your time getting the perfect shot, guilty as charged, allow extra time at locations to do so. Because trust me, you're going to want it. Okay, let's dive into some of the must-do activities. The Blue Ice Cave, unbelievable. That was one of the coolest things I've ever done. 100% top of the list. Snorkeling between tectonic plates in Silphra snorkeling pond. Who can say, like, I mean, I can now. I can say I've snorkeled between tectonic plates. That's just so sick. Northern Lights hunting, absolute must. We tried, we failed, unfortunately. We had the Aurora app, which shows you where the Northern Lights are. Pretty much wherever we were on the island, you were predicted to see the lights on the other side. It was just bad luck, but oh well. Diamond Beach and Glacier Lagoon are absolutely insane. You can do those like after or before you do the glacier tour because it's all in that area. But I would highly recommend getting down to Diamond Beach for sunrise because gorgeous sunrise. The whale watching up in the Cury was a really chilled out tour, but it was just so cool. And to be able to see whales breaching the surface then diving back down, that was a magical experience. The plane wreck down on the south of the island, for me that was iconic to go and visit that plane wreck, and it was amazing. That was so good. And finally, one of the lagoons, the Sky Lagoon or the Blue Lagoon, is an absolute must do. But as I said before, leave it till the end of your trip. I think that's all the information I can give you. Just other like random things. Even if you're not a photographer or videographer, take a camera. Like, it's gorgeous. It's genuinely an insane country. But other than that, that's everything that really comes to mind for what you need to know about Iceland. If there's anything I haven't covered, drop a comment down below. I answer every single comment. So anything you want to know that I've not covered in this video, or I partially covered, or whatever, like anything you don't understand or you want to know about, just drop a comment and I will do my best to answer that for you guys. Also, if you haven't checked out the 3-part Iceland series yet, I highly recommend you do so. It was my dream trip came true, so I love those videos. I think they're so good. And yeah, go check them out, go get some inspiration, go see what you can get up to in Iceland, and yeah. So that is it. That is it for this video. As I say, if you have any questions or anything, drop a comment down below. Leave a like down below as well to help push us out to other people wanting to go to Iceland. Appreciate you all. Don't forget to take a shot. Peace.